At a holiday meal, my sibling found out I had approximately $15 million, and my relatives insisted I hand it over to her, stating she was more deserving of it. Hey folks, before we dive into today's topic, could I ask for your assistance? We've seen our channel isn't getting as much attention lately, and hitting subscribe is a fantastic way to boost us. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps us keep making videos you like. Your support is really important. Let's help this channel expand together. Thanks so much. Okay, let's start the main part now. Posting this on a spare account to stay private, altering some small details to avoid being recognized. So, I'm Jessica, a woman in my late 30s, and I really need to share this experience. Are you familiar with families where one kid is always perfect and the other seems completely overlooked? Yep, that's basically how things were for me. Things seemed pretty ordinary until I was about 7. I was the only child back then, and although my mom and dad weren't super affectionate, they were around, I guess. My mother would assist with my schoolwork, and my father would sometimes take me out fishing near Miller's Creek. We weren't like the perfect family on TV, but things were okay. Then came the evening that shifted everything. I remember my Aunt Barbara arriving in the middle of the night, telling me to pack a bag because Mom was in the hospital. My sibling Emily was going to be born, but there was a problem. She was supposed to arrive about 8 weeks later. The next few weeks were a rush of trips to the hospital and quiet conversations. Emily was incredibly tiny. She resembled one of my toy babies, but covered in all these tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to touch her or get too close. That was the first time I sensed it, a barrier forming between me and the rest of my family. When they eventually brought Emily home, our house transformed into a super clean bubble. Mom became fixated on germs. I mean, intense cleaning everywhere, hand sanitizer dispensers in every single room, and constant wiping down surfaces. The strong smell of cleaning products still makes me feel uneasy today. But here's the part that really affected me. Whenever I showed even the slightest sign of being unwell, I was immediately sent off to either my grandmother Carol or Aunt Barbara's house. I mean, without fail, every single time. A single sneeze? Get your things ready. A small cough? You're headed to see grandmother. At first, I thought it was fun. Grandmother Carol would bake cookies, and Aunt Barbara had an amazing set of mystery novels that I was working my way through. But kids aren't foolish. After a while, you start to realize what's really happening. You aren't being sent away for cool trips, you're being treated like a risk, as if your very presence could harm your treasured sibling. I genuinely tried every possible way to get their attention in a healthier manner. Honestly, everything. Got top marks? Mom would hardly glance up from Emily's latest schedule for appointments with the doctor. Won the main prize in the science fair with a project about recycling? Dad just asked if I could keep the project board in the garage since Emily might be bothered by dust. Is that even possible? The truly upsetting moment arrived when I was about 11. For months, I'd been preparing for the school showcase, learning to play Lean on Me on the piano by myself. I know, it's a bit obvious. Emily had a mild fever on the night of the event. Guess who didn't have anyone from their family in the audience? Meanwhile, just 2 weeks later, the entire family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Emily's short instrument recital where she pretty much butchered a simple tune. Emily quickly figured out how to take advantage of the situation. By the time she was about 6, she had outgrown any serious medical issues, but that didn't stop her from playing sick. Headache? Must stay home from school. Feeling tired? Guess who had to do her chores? Anxious about a test? Mom would literally call the school to ask them to postpone the deadline. I started spending more and more time in my bedroom, lost in books about art history and old items. It's strange how things turn out sometimes. My room became my safe place, mostly because Emily claimed she was sensitive to my room spray, so it was the one area she wouldn't go near. Do you know what's messed up? When she pretended to be sick, a part of me felt relieved. At least I'd be taken to Grandmother Carol's, where someone would ask about my day or be interested in what I was doing. Grandmother was the one who sparked my passion for antique jewelry. She had an incredible collection of decorative pieces that she allowed me to sort and list. I guess I should have seen it as a sign of things to come. The worst aspect wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was how they changed past events to justify their behavior. Emily just needs more focus because she had such a difficult beginning. Jessica has always been so self-sufficient. Jessica understands that her sister requires special consideration. First of all, I didn't understand. I was a young person who couldn't figure out why having a good immune system meant I deserved less affection. Looking back now, I can see how those years shaped me. The constant message that I was somehow risky or inconvenient to have around doesn't just disappear. But hey, at least it taught me to stand on my own 2 feet. When nobody checks your schoolwork or cares about your wins, you quickly learn to be your own biggest supporter. High school years. Most people either loved it or hated it. Me? I saw it as my way out. While Emily was building her little drama world in middle school, I was setting up the groundwork for my escape. And let me tell you, nothing motivates you to achieve more than knowing nobody will do it for you. Remember how I mentioned spending hours sorting Grandmother Carol's jewelry? That taught me a critical skill: the need for detailed arrangement and carefulness. In high school, I approached everything with the same mindset. My study area at home looked like something from a neatness magazine. Color-coded notes, carefully planned study schedules, and everything perfectly placed. Emily made fun of me for it, calling me the organized one. Real kind, sis. But here's the positive side of being overlooked. Nobody is tracking your mistakes or achievements, so you can do whatever you feel like. I joined every group that wouldn't get in the way of my part-time work at the local cafe. A huge thank you to David, the owner, for remembering my special day when my own parents forgot. Debate club? Yep. Head of the Academic Honor Society? Yep. Main editor of the school newspaper? Yep. Joining the debate team was where I truly found my confidence to speak up. There's something really satisfying about dismantling someone's argument while staying totally calm. It also taught me how to negotiate, which I didn't realize at the moment, but would be useful later on. I won the statewide competition twice. Emily had important soccer games. Therefore, my parents couldn't make it to either of my competitions. She was on a lower-level team and didn't even play in the game. Amazing. My third year of high school was when things really got interesting. I took the standardized test and got a perfect score. Not just, oh, pretty good, but flawless. I mean, absolutely perfect, 1600. Do you know how few people achieve that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the score screen for almost 20 minutes, convinced it was a mistake. I hurried home to tell my parents. I knew this was probably pointless. Mom was in the kitchen helping Emily with her language arts homework. The conversation went something like this. Me saying, "Mom, check this out. I got a flawless score on the test." Mom replying, "That's nice, dear, but could you be quieter? Emily is trying to focus. She has an important quiz tomorrow." Emily interrupting, "That's right. Yeah, some of us actually need to study, Miss Perfect," she said. Mom adding, "Emily, sweetie, don't worry. You just learn in a different way." I still have the printed copy of those test results somewhere. It never made it onto the refrigerator. But Emily's average grade in language arts? That small paper got prime real estate on the fridge, complete with a "We're so proud of you" magnet. Choosing colleges. The process of applying to universities was something else. I applied to 15 different schools without telling anyone. I wrote all of my own essays, got my own letters of recommendation, and handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My school counselor, Mr. Lee, was the real hero. My parents were too busy to assist with the college aid form, so I stayed late after school to do it. Then the acceptance letters started coming in. Prestigious universities, top state schools. And every single one included an offer of financial assistance. I kept them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Emily found out. Their focus would suddenly shift completely to her needs. But if Jessica goes away to a prestigious university, I'll be all by myself. Or some similar nonsense. The day I got my offer for a full scholarship to the state university, Emily joined the junior cheerleading squad. Guess which achievement was celebrated with a family meal out? Hint, I had instant noodles in my room while they went out for pizza. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. School fees, room and board, and even money for books were covered. I could finally leave that place where I felt either invisible or like a nuisance. The day my acceptance package arrived, I went to my favorite quiet spot in the town library, a window seat on the top floor looking out over the park, and cried for nearly an hour. Not sad tears. They were tears of freedom. When I told my parents at dinner that I was heading to the state university, they were surprisingly not happy. My dad asked, "The state university? But that's so far away. What if Emily needs you?" My mom added, "I hope you're not expecting us to help with costs. Emily's cheerleading events are quite expensive." Emily burst into tears, saying, "Oh my goodness. Finally. Can I have your room? I need space for my social media videos." That final summer before starting university, I worked double shifts at the local cafe to build up some savings. David, bless his kind heart, always gave me extra tips and made sure I got to take home leftover dessert at the end of my shifts. He also taught me an important lesson: how to spot genuine people in a world full of fakes. "Kid," he'd tell me, "in cafes and in life, the ones making the biggest fuss usually have the least substance." Moving into my dorm room at the state university. My parents couldn't be there because, big surprise, Emily had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Barbara drove me instead, helped me get my room organized, and gave me an envelope with about $600. "Your grandmother Carol wanted you to have this," she told me. "She's incredibly proud of you." Later, I found out that grandmother had been putting that money aside from her pension checks for months. That first evening in my new room, I made a promise to myself that I was going to build such a wonderful life that being overlooked would be impossible to imagine. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to my family, but for the 8-year-old girl who used to get sent to grandmother's house just for sneezing. University and the beginning of something new. College life passed in a whirlwind of late-night studying, cheap food, and wonderful independence. I finished university with high honors. Not that my parents noticed or cared. They were too busy helping Emily transfer to her third different college in about 3 years. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level position at the Baker and Clark auction house in a nearby city. I won't use the real name for privacy reasons, but if you're in that field, you probably know the place. A truly upscale establishment, lots of clients with old money, that kind of business. I started in their estate services division, which involved cataloging the possessions of wealthy individuals after they had passed away. Not exactly exciting, but it paid the bills. The major breakthrough. My first few months were pretty standard, listing countless sets of dishes, sorting vintage furniture, and so on. Then came the Johnson estate. Mrs. Johnson was an elderly widow who had passed away with no children, leaving behind what everyone believed was just a huge collection of costume jewelry. Rooms filled with the stuff. This is where those hours spent at Grandmother Carol's house proved useful. I'm going through this mountain of jewelry when something catches my eye. It's a decorative pin from the early 1930s era. Nothing particularly flashy, but something about it felt different. The weight felt wrong for costume jewelry. The clasping mechanism was much too intricate for a replica. I think I spent my entire meal break that day researching old jewelry markers and identifying symbols. I ended up staying late at the office to use the company's access to several databases for antique jewelry. The more I looked, the more certain I became that this was not just fake jewelry. It was the real deal. The problem was, I was the newest person there. Nobody would believe me if I claimed we had a potential hidden gem on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I carefully built my case. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about authenticating decorative jewelry from the early 1930s. I even used some of my pitiful small savings to pay for an online course about gems. Finally, I gathered the courage to approach my boss, Mr. Miller. I brought the complete presentation, including comparison photos, historical background information, and all the evidence. The conversation went something like this. Me stating, "Sir, I believe we might have found something very valuable in the Johnson collection." Mr. Miller, hardly looking up from his device, replied, "Jessica, we've already categorized those as decorative pieces." Me responding, "You're correct. I understand, but look at these manufacturer's marks. They match perfectly with a famous designer's signatures from the early 1930s. Mr. Miller, finally paying attention, "Where did you find out all of this?" My simple reply was, I did some looking into it. I committed myself to learning everything possible about vintage jewelry. I took every online class I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales, examining items. I even started a small notebook to record different procedures for verifying authenticity. My apartment looked like a jewelry expert's crazy dream, with walls covered with printouts of old symbols and guidelines for certification. The auction house started seeing positive results. I was finding significant items that others had missed, building relationships with buyers, and understanding the market. My paychecks from commission grew larger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just getting by. I was actually saving money. My family was still remarkably uninterested. At meals on Sundays, which I still attended like a foolish person, the conversation typically went like this. Mom asking, "Jessica is still working at that place that sells old items, right?" This is me replying, "It's an auction house." And yes, actually, I just confirmed a rare item from a well-known designer. Emily interrupting, "Oh my gosh. Speaking of, baubles, you folks absolutely must take a look at this pretty bangle I found at the retail center." But I had stopped caring. For the first time ever, I had come across something completely my own something. I was actually skilled at something separate from being Emily's sibling. Family disappointment. Next arrived the Belmont collection. This was approximately 3 years into my job at the auction firm. A huge inheritance from a very old and wealthy household. There was a great deal of buzz in the sector. I was part of the group that documented their gemstone collection, and that's when I spotted it, a rather ordinary-looking Art Nouveau item that everyone else had overlooked. I devoted 4 days to researching it. I barely slept. It turned out to be an item from a famous Continental jeweler's private collection, believed to have vanished during the turbulent times of the mid-20th century. When it fetched $245,000 at auction, Douglas called me to his office. I assumed I was about to be promoted. Instead, he made a statement that totally altered the situation. "Clara, your skills are being wasted here. You ought to be running your own verification agency." At first, I dismissed it. Me? Launch a business? With what funds? However, the notion began to settle in. I started taking on small freelance authentication assignments on the side. News spread that I possessed a remarkable eye. Private collectors started getting in touch directly. One evening, I was sitting in my humble flat surrounded by gemology books and appraisal tools that I had slowly acquired when I had a sudden realization: this is something I could genuinely pursue. I could establish something entirely on my own. So I did what any sensible individual would do. I took out a significant loan against my vehicle. I depleted my savings store. I leased a tiny office space in a less desirable part of the city. People thought I was mad. Perhaps I was. I converted a storage room above a takeout place about the size of a college sleeping quarters. The rent was minimal because it always smelled like spicy noodles, and the internet connection only worked if you sat by the window in the corner. But it belonged to me. The struggle. The initial few months were eventful, and by eventful, I mean terrifying. I would wake up at 3 a.m. drenched in cold sweat, calculating how many months until my saved money ran out. Loan payments felt like a constricting band around my throat. My office furnishings consisted of: I purchased a small table from a thrift store, a seat I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, it was thoroughly cleaned. However, in the realm of upscale gemstones, standing and contacts are paramount, and my background at the auction establishment provided me with both. I began modestly by performing verification work for local antique vendors. My charges were less than the larger organizations, but my scrupulous attention to detail was becoming recognized. Word got around. Roughly 8 months later, a pivotal event occurred. A merchant I had interacted with at the auction house inquired about a collection of Victorian-era pins. The proprietor requested confirmation before selling. It turned out to be a vast collection with items spanning 4 generations of families. I dedicated 2 weeks straight to it, rarely sleeping, documenting everything. I uncovered 2 exceedingly uncommon pieces that had been misidentified as later copies. The owner was so pleased with my thorough examination that she not only settled my fee but also offered me a 12% commission when the item sold. Was that a commission? $92,000. More funds than I had earned in the preceding 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone was ringing constantly. Private collectors had heard about my ability for finding missed treasures, estate attorneys seeking advice on inherited jewelry. Even my former auction house began sending me authentication work. I'm fairly certain Douglas was discreetly helping spread the news. Appreciate it, boss. Scaling up. By year 3, I'd brought on my first staff member, Joanne, a recent gemology program graduate who reminded me very much of myself at that age. She was exceptionally bright, yet she was often overlooked because she was quiet. She is now my head of appraisals and is truly worth her weight in gold. The firm expanded more rapidly than I could have anticipated. Relocated to a proper office downtown, goodbye spicy noodle aroma. Assembled a group of experts. I've cultivated a reputation for discovering items that were thought lost. You wouldn't believe how many significant historical jewelry pieces get misidentified as costume items in people's storage areas, keeping it hidden from my family. Nonetheless, prosperity came with its own set of difficulties. The larger we grew, the more challenging it became to conceal it from my relatives. They still thought I was employed at an antique shop. Emily would make these snide remarks during family meals. Emily asks, Clara, I have some old jewelry I was thinking of donating to a thrift store. Maybe your little shop might be interested? Me having just verified a $1.3 million important historical piece that morning, certainly, I'll take a look. Mom continues to introduce me to everyone, is my other daughter. She works with old trinkets or something. Meanwhile, I was featured in a business publication, luckily under my company name, and we had recently opened our 4th location. What's peculiar about it? Maintaining the secret became almost enjoyable, like this inside joke I shared with myself. I'd attend Sunday dinner in my discount store outfit, really high-end luxury clothing, listening to Emily discuss her junior marketing role, knowing I had just finalized a transaction for more than her annual salary. I even began playing small games with myself, such as wearing genuine designer jewelry to family gatherings and seeing if anyone noticed. They never did. Emily once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $220 fashion watch. I was wearing a vintage prestige watch that cost more than her vehicle. Managing growth. However, the real obstacle was handling expansion. By year 6, we'd established offices in Atlanta, Dallas, and Miami. I spent more hours on planes than in my own bed. We developed a reputation for discretion. It turns out that many wealthy individuals want their valuables confirmed without the wider world knowing. The financial rewards were substantial. For instance, we needed to retain a large team of financial planners. Nonetheless, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I purchased a nice but not flashy residence in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a high-end but not ostentatious automobile. The only area I truly indulged my home office, state-of-the-art authentication equipment, the most effective security system money could acquire, a custom-built vault designed to make a maximum security depository envious. What's with the irony? They believed I was being thrifty by assisting them. Mom would comment things like, "It's so sweet of Clara to help out. She must be living on rice and beans to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just authenticated a collection which earned me a commission greater than their home loan. You know what's odd about reaching success? The more you have, the more difficult it is to explain to people who have always viewed you as less capable. It's like describing a rainbow to someone who has only experienced shades of gray. They lack the necessary background. But by this stage, my business was thriving. We had cornered the high-end gemstone appraisal sector in the region, and our reputation was as solid as gold, literally. But every Sunday I'd visit my parents' house for dinner, playing the role of Clara, the humble antique shop employee. The mental inconsistency was becoming comical. I'd spend my mornings on teleconferences with collectors in Singapore, my afternoons verifying multi-million-dollar items, and my evenings at my parents' home in carefully selected ordinary clothes, eating Mom's overcooked meatloaf, while Emily dominated the conversation with tales about her latest marketing victory, usually something like delivering her boss's hot beverage without spilling it. A notable moment. One Sunday stands out clearly in my memory. I had just finalized a huge deal validating a missing prized designer item that had been sitting in someone's safety deposit box for 45 years. Was it just the commission? 7 figures. I drove straight from the meeting to my parents' place, still overjoyed from the successful authentication. She said, "Clara dear, is everything all right? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "Oh, trying to economize," I said, wearing a $3,200 cashmere pullover that I had intentionally chosen for its understated appearance. Emily responded, "Well, if you'd gotten a proper job instead of playing with old trinkets." My dad, Emily, be kind. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I nearly choked on my meatloaf, trying not to burst out laughing. The anonymous deposits. Monthly payments to my parents began around this period. Aunt Judy informed me that they were struggling to cover Emily's tuition fees and medical expenses. Mom casually mentioned that they might have to sell their property. I couldn't allow that to happen. Despite everything, it was still the home where I grew up. So I initiated an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,500 to their account. When asked, I claimed I was contributing $1,200 by living on simple, inexpensive food. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Judy or other family members. Emily, of course, took credit for inspiring relatives to help. Watching Emily spend my money. The money was beneficial, but it also had unforeseen outcomes. My parents started treating me with a strange blend of pity and patronizing admiration, as if I were some sort of noble low-income case sacrificing everything to support the household. Meanwhile, Emily's spending became more extravagant. She'd arrive for dinner with new expensive purses claiming they were bargain finds. They weren't. I can spot a genuine luxury handbag brand from 25 pesos. She began taking lavish vacations and boasting on social media about her blessed life. I'm highly confident she used my support money for shopping excursions. However, I stayed quiet. The irony was simply exquisite. The graduate degree drama. Then came the college fund issue. Emily announced that she wanted to return to school for her graduate degree. Another private university, naturally only the best for the favored child. Mom contacted me in tears explaining how they couldn't afford it. I suggested, maybe Emily could consider state universities? They have good programs too. My mother, oh dear, you don't grasp it. Your sister needs to uphold certain standards. But speaking of helping, may I increase my monthly contribution for a few years? I raised it to $7,500 per month. My finances remained unaffected. But witnessing them praise Emily for taking initiative with her education while assuming I was surviving on basic meals to assist, that stung a bit. The actual highlight? I was giving a guest lecture at the very same business school Emily wanted to attend. My family was unaware of that. The dean personally invited me to present on luxury goods authenticity and business expansion. I had to devise an excuse as to why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own accomplishments started to feel like a completely separate existence, as if I were some kind of corporate superhero with a secret identity. By day, I was operating a multi-million-dollar authentication enterprise. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was just Clara, the supposedly disappointing daughter who worked at an antique shop. The breaking point? A major family holiday. The weight of the deception was becoming heavier. Emily made cutting remarks about my career on multiple occasions. Each time Mom apologized to her acquaintances for my humble lifestyle. Every time Dad suggested I get a proper job. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't anticipate it would explode so spectacularly on this particular holiday. It started about 3 weeks before the event. Mom called crying about her back discomfort. She had been diagnosed with a disc issue, and the prospect of preparing the holiday feast for 25 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd like to say that I offered to help purely out of kindness, but really I was tired of pretending her dry poultry was edible. My response, "Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered." She replied, "Oh dear, we can't afford professional catering." My response, "Don't worry about the expense. I've been putting money aside." Mom concerned, "You're not taking out a loan, are you?" I coordinated everything with an upscale catering company that I use for business gatherings. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you question why you ever bothered to cook yourself. It cost more than my parents believed I earned in 3 months, but whatever. The holiday morning arrived and I was feeling quite good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a significant online auction in Singapore. A stunning Art Nouveau neckpiece was for sale, and I had a customer who was interested in appraisal if they won the bid. The meal arrived promptly and everything was perfectly arranged. Emily, of course, had to comment. Emily inquired, "Ready-made filling really, Clara? Mom's is so much superior." This is from the person who once activated the smoke alarm while making toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were thoroughly enjoying the food. Emily fell silent after tasting the maple-glazed small cabbages, which incidentally cost more per plate than her weekly food expenditures. I stepped away from the main course and dessert to check my computer. The auction was getting exciting, and I needed to be ready in case my client was the winner. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Emily's room had undergone 4 makeovers. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my appraisal software running with multiple tabs open, displaying various accounts and current commitments. Emily came in without knocking. Some habits never changed to borrow my phone charging cable. She saw my laptop screen and recognized this was her opportunity to finally expose how insignificant her older sister was. Emily smirking, "Let's show everyone what Clara's really been busy with." Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and walked into the dining area. The big unveiling. Picture this: 25 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, stuffed with gourmet turkey and half inebriated on expensive wine which they mistook for discount grocery store label. Emily's declaration time to see what kind of crucial work Clara is occupied with on this holiday. She turned the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to humiliate me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room became completely silent. You could hear the fancy clock I gave Mom for Christmas ticking quietly. She thought it was a replica. My screen displayed current account balance $13.1 million. Pending authentication agreement $510,000. Recent transaction $1.3 million. Singapore auction firm's quarterly financial report $4.5 million. Emily's face cycled through 6 different expressions in 4 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between stunned disbelief and sheer sickness. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. Alara murmured, "This doesn't seem accurate." "Alara, darling, what's the matter?" my mother asked. Alara, voice trembling, "She's wealthy. Clara's rich." Utter chaos erupted. If it were possible, the stillness deepened even further. Then my mother began to chuckle, truly guffawing. She commented, "Don't be ridiculous. Clara works at that small curiosity shop." Me, actually, yes, Mom. I manage a significant company that verifies precious objects across the country. For a long time, those comments about the shop. I authenticate items valued at tens of millions. That little enterprise you never showed interest in? It operates from branches in several metropolitan areas. My father choked on his drink. My relative Jane dropped her eating utensil. My relative Victor started coughing terribly. Then my mother's laughter shifted into something different. Her face turned crimson, then a deep purple. She rose so rapidly that her seat tipped over. My mother bellowed, "You possess millions, and you allowed us to struggle?" My reply, "Struggle? I transfer about £7,500 to you every single month." She responded, "While sitting on fortunes. Your sibling is burdened with educational debts." So there it was. Instead of congratulations, instead of "Wow, we're so proud," just indignation that I hadn't provided them with more funds. Alara started to weep, astonishing, I know, sobbing that she deserved to know and that I had betrayed our kin. My father joined in. "My father, how could you be so self-centered? We are your guardians. We raised you." That was the point I lost control. Decades of being disregarded, decades of dismissal, decades of being seen as a letdown to the clan. Everything just spilled out. My reply, "Raised me? You dispatched me to grandmother Eleanor's place every single time I sniffled. You missed every success, every commendation, every significant moment because Alara might feel excluded. You never put aside a single coin for my higher education but secured borrowings for her exclusive institution. And now you're furious because I built something for myself." The subsequent 5 minutes were pandemonium. Mum yelled about familial duties. Dad was shouting about ungrateful offspring. Alara switched between crying profusely and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the sophisticated catering crew attempted to serve sweet courses while appearing exceedingly uncomfortable. I grabbed my computer, collected my high-end designer purse, which Mum had previously praised as a nice imitation, and exited. Behind me, I could hear Mum discussing how to spend my money, something involving Alara's advanced degree and a new vehicle. As I drove home in my rather nice automobile, a specific model from a known manufacturer, my device started filling up with communications. The kin chat group exploded. Alara began posting on her network about concealed family riches and selfish siblings. The aftermath. The days following the autumnal meal were akin to observing a whirlwind strike in slow motion, except that the tempest symbolized my lineage and the debris represented my mental stability. Let's begin with short text messages. Within an hour of departing the meal, my device had roughly 50 missed calls, over 210 notifications. Mom followed this peculiar sequence. 7:45 p.m., how dare you leave family like that? 8:20 p.m., we need to discuss this rationally. 9:10 p.m., your sibling is entitled to a share of your achievements. 10:35 p.m., I've already contacted a property agent about homes in nicer districts. 11:50 p.m., why won't you reply? This is your parent. Concurrently, Alara had become a complete online agitator. Alara, conversely, had fully embraced digital communication platforms. She penned a lengthy grievance online about how her prosperous sister had been accumulating wealth while watching her beloved relatives struggle. The responses section was wild. Distant relations and former secondary school associates, whom I hadn't conversed with in ages, suddenly held firm opinions about my ethical standing. But this is the segment that truly captured my attention. Alara actually posted, all those years of me trying to aid Clara's prospects, offering her counsel on advancing from that small curiosity shop, and she was secretly prosperous. The betrayal stings so much. I nearly hurled my device across the room. What was the sole career suggestion she ever offered me? She proposed I try selling jewelry online. If you're unfamiliar with the phrase, messenger birds happen when difficult relatives dispatch others to make you feel guilty. My relative Beatrice, whom I saw perhaps once every 3 years, telephoned to inform me that family is everything. My relative George, who I'm fairly certain still thinks I'm around 17, emailed me a lengthy sermon on the significance of distributing prosperity. Even my third cousin's spouse's sister, how did she obtain my information, felt obligated to express her thoughts on familial duty. But the real amusement commenced when they appeared at my place of business. I arrived in on Monday morning to find Mum, Dad, and Alara seated in our receiving area. They informed Alice, my assistant, that they had a meeting for verification services. Alara clutched her standard brand bag as if it was genuinely valuable. The exchange proceeded about as well as one might anticipate. Mum, we've deliberated as a collective. Me, a collective deliberation without the individual you're discussing? Mum, disregarding me, and we believe it's only fair that you establish financial accounts for everyone. Alara replies, I require at least 2.1 million credits to commence my new existence appropriately. Dad stated, and your mother and I would like to cease working. We're considering a residence by the water in a sunny coastal location. This is me. Did you miss the part where I've been transferring you about £7,500 each month? Alara replies, that's insignificant compared to what you possess. You are indebted to us. You're thinking, I am indebted to you for what specifically? The years of being disregarded? The missed ceremonies? The perpetual comparisons? Mum, stop being dramatic, Clara. We provided you with everything. My reply, no. I provided myself with everything. And you know what? I am finished. Right there, within my own office reception area, I retrieved my device and terminated the monthly transfers to their account. Mum gasped as though I had struck her. Alara commenced her feigned weeping performance, but quickly ceased when she realized it wasn't effective. Then matters became unpleasant. They refused to depart. I had to contact security personnel. Witnessing my mom, who is around 65, being escorted out while shouting about ungrateful offspring was surreal. Alice inquired whether I wanted to pursue legal action. I declined. However, I did have their names listed on the building's restrict entry list. The persistent annoyance endured for weeks. Different telephone identifiers, fabricated digital addresses. They even attempted to reach me via my company's client assistants. I ultimately had to issue a formal legal notification threatening charges for harassment. Mum then utilized her final tactic. She contacted grandmother Eleanor. But here's the detail about grandmother Eleanor. She is more sagacious than all of them combined. How did she react? Good for Clara. It's about time someone in this lineage succeeded on their own accord. Mum did not communicate with her for over 2 months following that. It has been close to 6 months since the autumnal meal. I relocated to a new dwelling with enhanced security measures. I altered all of my contact identifiers. What about the enterprise? We are thriving better than ever before. It turns out that my familial difficulties attracted several high-profile clients who admired my prudence in the situation. Alara continues to write passive-aggressive updates about harmful affluence and kin betrayal. According to what I've heard, she is establishing her own jewelry verification business. Best of fortune with that endeavor. Mom and Dad finally ceased attempting to contact me when my legal representative composed them an official correspondence outlining how the charges for harassment would impact their existences. They're now informing everyone that they never desired my funds anyway and that they're praying for my redemption. What is the most favorable aspect? For the first time in my existence, I feel unburdened. No more weekend meals filled with subtle insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their sensitivities. No longer financing the Alara production. My therapist believes I am finally establishing appropriate boundaries. I say I am finally experiencing life genuinely. So, that is my account, online community. Thank you for allowing me to convey it. Specific gratitude to the catering company who sent me a festive greeting card stating that the autumnal meal was the highlight of their year. Modification. Replies to frequent inquiries. Yes, I am still undergoing therapeutic sessions. No, I do not regret severing ties with them. Yes, grandmother Eleanor is doing well. She is visiting next month to assist me in cataloging a new collection. One final comment directed at Alara. I know you are likely reading this. What about the gold cuff you're displaying in your most recent online post? Definitely not genuine. Just mentioning.